welcome to the yet to be named Magic the Gathering podcast with myself, Alex, or really pretty MTG, and my good friend here, Dom, aka the Dominator MTG. How you doing, my friend?
I've been sick, but I'm otherwise doing well, and it is my birthday today. So yeah.
Well, I mean, we did talk about singing happy birthday, but maybe we won't. But anyway, happy birthday, my friend. I hope you're enjoying your older years.
The twilight of my life. Yeah, going great so far. Thank you.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Okay, we've got a special guest today. We have Christian from one half of the Chad Magic. How you doing, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you. A happy birthday to Dom, by the way. What better way to spend your birthday than as a rose between two control players?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well done. You can come back. Yeah.
I'm enjoying this already. I'm enjoying this already. For anyone that hasn't already, please go check out Chad Magic. Their stuff is absolutely fantastic. Not just because I've been on it, of course, but generally I thoroughly enjoy Commander play. And also, if you haven't already, go check out the Battle Chad side of things, which is the more competitive side. I know you guys have been doing podcasts. I listened to the latest one today, actually. I've very much enjoying it, actually. It's very, very good.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job, those lads. And the recent one, so Luis and Josh have taken the lead on that, and Luis qualified in the first RCQ of the season on Is It Phoenix? Yep. So if there's any budding Phoenix players, go check out that, because there's like a full deck list sideboard breakdown or anything. So if you're an Is It player, you wanna listen to that.
It's really good, because actually I'm building Is It Phoenix, and actually I may tap him up, because I know he sort of said, drop him a message, if anyone's interested. And I'm just gathering that experience from play. I may be doing that, because it's something that I've been wanting to build it for a while, but yeah.
Well, someone did that and messaged him, and I think got into the top 4 of a 52-player RCQ with the first time playing the deck after they copied his list and spoke to him. So
I can guarantee you that will not be me. I can guarantee that won't be. But I am looking. I've got some decks in mind for standard, pioneer, and modern that are just going to be my decks. I pilot, I change. I'm changing how I normally do things, because well, we'll get back into it. I'm sure we'll talk about this when we're in here. So today's episode, we're mainly going to be talking about standard, but we've all just been to the latest CommandFest, which Axion has hosted, and we're just going to touch base on that a little bit and have a little chat about that beforehand. But Dom, I know obviously me and Christian were very busy on the content side of things, but how was your CommandFest?
It was excellent. I've enjoyed the last few of these events, and they do get better every time. Axion do a great job. I was mainly just jamming pods of Commander.
Yep.
Saving up my ticks. I wasn't going for a giant card this time. You need a dedicated pod to harvest enough ticks for those. But it was a really good event. And obviously I came and saw you guys, did some pack wars, and for the record, I'm now 4-1 against poor Adam as well. So
I don't know if you're aware of this, Christian, but Adam and Dom have an ongoing rivalry here, that they're every time they see each other, they have a competitive match, and it's building nicely.
I'm sad, because he did actually put together an EDH deck with everyone's help over the weekend. Obviously, you were part of that. Where people were giving him cards, and he was building as good a deck as he could out of it. And I didn't get to give him a game. So next time I see Adam, I'll have to give him a game with his new deck. It's crowdfunded
100%
deck.
Did either of you get to have a little flick through it?
Yeah, he did show me. There's some real spice in there.
Yeah,
I didn't.
For something that's thrown together, it looks punchy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's he's done a really good job from it. I mean, I may have helped by throwing a Mole God in there, of course, but I pulled two of them. I pulled 2 of them in our pack battle things, so he ended up having one of them. But yeah, I think he done pretty well with his bulk. But it's actually a really nice idea, and it's really nice to see from that sort of perspective. That's what it's all about, being CommandFest. Christian, I know every time I wandered past you and Wally, you guys were hard at work. If it weren't recording, it was doing pack wars with the general public. How was your CommandFest?
So Pack Wars, by the way, it's my first time playing the format. I really enjoyed that, and so I want to crack packs with that. I went 9-1 in Pack Wars, so I think I found my niche. But yeah, I'd say I think I played 2 games outside of Pack Wars, which was the meet and greet, and outside of the recording, which shows you like how much we were doing things. But we wanted to make sure that we got games with the patrons. So I think between Wally and I, we got a game with all of the patrons who were there, who also wanted a game with us. So it wasn't like we forced them to do it or anything like that. But it was really good to see everyone. And I think as sort of creators within the community, we talk a lot, but we don't actually see each other in person that much. And so that was really, really good. I enjoyed that that part of it. I mean, I'd be happy not to have another Nando's, because Will Hall is kind of like quite militant in his approach to demanding that we go to Nando's. But it was really, really good fun. And I managed to, in the evenings, jam some Pioneer games as well with people in our accommodation, which was great. But I think it's worth shouting out Axion for putting on a great event, but also for supporting UK Magic, and they do it in a competitive way as well. They're one of the few that really, really drive that. So I'm always happy to kind of help out Axion, because we've got that kind of shared vision of like building the UK Magic scene to be the best it can be. So we had a great time. I would say I'm very happy to never have to put a cowboy hat on again. It messes up my hair. That's the problem. So yeah, I'm glad until we get the next whatever set it is that has a different type of hat. We can relax a little bit.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to. I want to mirror what you sort of said there about Axion. Actually, they have been for me. They are the cornerstone of particularly the UK Magic Gathering scene. And I know you're more involved in the competitive side of things, Christian, but obviously we know with the Mega Moderns and stuff like that, the events they put on there, I mean, I've been to a few of them and they are fantastic. And in truth, without them, I think we would, as a country, would struggle, particularly with the competitive scene, but particularly with the community side of things. I think we're all pretty thankful of it, to be quite honest, so, and they do a fantastic job. And now, working on the other side of it as well, like I know you would have done, Christian, as well. It's nice to touch base with them and see what they've got going behind the veil, really. And my God, they work hard. Like, I know everybody sort of is quite easy to, I'll pay my bronze pass and I'll just rock up. But I do implore people, if you can, spend your money with them and do what you can with them. They really are supporting the UK scene, and it's so nice to see it. And I want to see them get bigger and better and see what they can do moving forward, really.
Hashtag not sponsored.
No. Not sponsored, but more than happy to talk about it. I, on the other hand, I enjoyed putting my cowboy hat on and cowboying up for a little bit, yeehawing around.
How many people actually claimed the bounty in the end? Because it was.
Before I answer mine, Christian, how many claimed yours?
I have absolutely no idea. I was taking a lot of pictures with people. I thought it was just because they wanted to meet me, but apparently that wasn't the case. There was some incentive to do it. And that was why I kept getting corralled. Whenever I walked down the main hallway, there was always somebody waiting to pounce on me. So, probably 12 or so. I don't know. That's a rough guess.
I love that. It's nothing to do with Action's like side event of taking selfies and hashtagging people in. It's all about Christian. They just wanted pictures of you, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah. A little bit of a window into my ego. Yeah. Well, Don was quite honest about it though. That was my sort of first. He didn't want a picture with me just because it was me. He said specifically, "No, I'm looking to claim your bounty." I was like, "Okay, fair enough."
Yeah. Off to the sheriff. Yeah.
Don,
call the marshal.
How many did you claim, Don? Because I know you were having a little look-see around.
I think I only got 4 in the end because I kind of forgot to do it the first day, and then the second day I was making up for lost time. But yeah, a lot of content we're recording a lot of the time, so it was grab them when you can.
Yeah,
get that picture. So
I'm surprised.
But yeah, it was a fun little mini game to be playing over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the guys at Action, I think it was a really good idea, and I think it probably needed to be announced a little bit with a bit more time so people we could hype, as the creators, we could hype it all up and really involve in it. But I mean, I got stopped. I probably not quite as much as Christian because I'm not a Chad Magic guy, but don't have that following the ego to go with it. Christian goes to go sideways through a door because it's so big. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really nice actually. But what was really funny, I sat there chatting to Luke from Shattergang, and all of a sudden this guy was just like, "Yo, can I take a selfie?" And literally was like, and we were both like, sort of caught it. It was very bizarre how people approached it. Some people were like, "Oh, excuse me," very apologetic, like, "Could I get a selfie for the competition?" You're like, "Yeah, no worries," have a little chat with them. And some people literally like, and then leg it like there's nothing. You're like, "Oh wow." So it's interesting, but I thought it was really good fun. It's a good way of interact with other people, all the social side of things. So I hope that continues, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
There was a really nice vibe, I would say, as well. Like, people were having a great time and really, really enjoying it. And there was loads of drafts as well, so it wasn't just the normal sort of commander pods and stuff like that. There was plenty of limited. There was so much Baldur's Gate. I mean, I should say as well, one of the reasons I didn't get so many games is someone had left like some big boxes of bulk.
I saw you this. I
became I became a little bulk gremlin. Well, the thing is, because it was mainly commander players, there were so many cards in there that are like completely playable in other formats. So I got like 6 Phoenix chicks. Not that I'd ever played mono red, and I got like an Up the Beanstalk and things like that. Massively playable cards. Yeah. So I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
I was looking through those boxes as well. There was some great little singles for my decks as well.
I think I didn't get the opportunity to go through it, but yeah, I did see you having a good rifle through it, Christian. I did. I was actually just doing some sort of footage for one of the videos I've got coming up, and I thought about sort of interjecting. But I was like, you looked like you were concentrating. You were literally like flicking through them like lightning speed. I won't disturb him. I won't disturb him. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, I know it's called CommandFest, but actually the events they put on there are great. And there's just something for everyone, whether it's a draft. They had Two-Headed Giant there. I did hear some people doing some sort of other competitive or semi-competitive. I think they were pioneering or something like that, just jamming games and just generally having fun, which is exactly what the event is all about in my mind. So yeah, they done a fantastic job. I think they do a great job, and they just get better every year, don't they? Let's be honest.
One last thing I'd like to shout out, by the way, because I've tried to start this movement around everybody should have at least one deck that doesn't have any sleeves on it, held together by elastic bands. And a few patrons came up to me, different ones, and said, we've started it, and they had these decks with elastic bands around them. And so I'm really happy to see that movement continue. So please do put all your bulk together. 10, 15, 20 pound deck, elastic bands, let's go. I want to see those decks. I will always have to, if you come up to me with a sleeveless commander deck, I will always jam a game with you. I'll stop whatever I'm doing, even if that's really important. I get told off by Wally. I want to play that game.
I've had a bad experience with your deck, so I don't ever want to see it again, but
That was a fun game. You can't say that wasn't fun.
Oh, it was very good fun. I think it's fitting the way it finished. I don't know if we spoke about it on this last pod, but when I recorded up with the Chad Magic guys, we jammed a little game afterwards, and I missed the memo because they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll just play something like budget." I pulled out some dirty combo deck. I completely missed the budget side of things, but we played anyway. And before we started, Christian sort of said, "Oh, can you sign a card, flick through it?" So I come across the counter spell, and I was like, "Well, I have to," sort of thing. And anyway, we're going through all the game, and we're there's some interactions on the stat going on here, and I fire off it was a force of will, and Christian's like counter with the counter spell that I signed, and it stung.
I getting the side quest. Sorry, there's the side objective completed at the same time as the main objective. I was like, I even showed Wally. I was like, I want to win with this card, and we ended up doing it. But it was a fun game, and of course, the game ended with typical in our fashion, a huge counter spell stack to decide the game. So yeah, it was good fun.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. I do love a good stack interaction, and but actually I'd like to pin you guys down for some CDH at some point, actually, because I think I know Wally plays a bit, and you play a bit, don't you, as well, Christian?
It's actually one of the formats that I don't play almost at all. I have a deck that can hang in a CDH pod, which is Malcolm and Breaches, but it's not got the fast mana and stuff that would need to probably be CDH. Weirdly, as a format, that's the one that kind of, when I've played it, it hasn't gelled with me, I think, because it may be an ADHD thing, because some of the things around Commander waiting to take your turn is a bit frustrating for me. But it's like sometimes you're just out the game and you can't really scoop, so you're like, But I'm sure I'm just maybe not playing the right deck, or I haven't been in the right pod. Definitely a format I'd like to try a bit more, but I am like a brand new beginner to that format. I wouldn't know where to go with it.
I think the important thing, I mean, I don't play a massive amount of CDH. I have played more so at the events we've gone to, more so is where I seem to play more of it. But I really enjoy it. I love watching it. I love playing with power, and that level of power you definitely get in CDH. And actually, the beautiful thing I love about it is as much as I'm more of an advocate of sitting down and having a conversation, the rule zero conversation, you don't have to, because you all know what you're there to do. And it's fast. And if it flings off in under 4 turns, great, shuffle off and off you go again, sort of thing.
Yeah, it is honestly a great format for people who enjoy shuffling.
Yeah, just it's a lot of shuffling.
One of the things you said there really resonates with me, because although I haven't done much CDH, obviously I do play a lot of competitive 1v1. I know we're going to talk about 1v1 formats, especially standard, a little bit later on. But talking about not having to have the rule zero conversation and being allowed to play whichever deck you want and not have that, sometimes your social battery for having that conversation and be like, oh, someone doesn't want me to play this deck, or I really enjoy this type of Magic, you'll know as a control player, because quite often you get rules zeroed out and it's like, no, I don't want you to play a control deck, play something simple, and then they bring out their Muldrotha or something, and then you just can't interact with the Spore Frog or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's why one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for 1v1, as amongst other reasons, is that's one of the things you don't have to worry about. Is if your deck's legal in the format, you're both there to win. Yep. There's no unfair or that's going to give me a miserable time. It actually is like a little bit less of a drain when it comes to that. So it's just something you said there just made me think that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy 1v1, is there isn't that kind of like social restriction on what you can and can't play.
I think it's always really important. I know we've spoken about this on the pod before, but it's always really important that, particularly when you're sitting down with people you don't know, or even more so with beginner players or very, very new players, it is a conversation that needs to happen, and it's on us as more experienced players to adapt to that. So the funny thing is what you were sort of saying about playing control is most of the pods I play in, people be like, I don't often get asked don't play control, because they know I'll play something else and it's probably just as bad, if not worse.
I feel like, as much as I whine about control, said this before as well, it's often necessary.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at the blue player to say, can you counter this Crater Hoof?
The combo players going off and then
yeah.
Or someone's playing like a Merrin or a Muldrotha deck or something like that, and all of a sudden Wally's turns to look at me and goes, have you got that farewell, mate? And I'm like, well, no, because now I'm playing Kibo because you couldn't handle my control deck. So
blame Wally. Always blame Wally. Yeah?
Well, it is always his fault. So that kind of works.
Oh, bless him. But I love it. But yeah, it is one of those things that is really important. But that's why, and I've said this before, when it comes to sitting down with Commander, when people ask those questions, I put nothing in the pot other than you play what you want. I don't care what it is. If it's land destruction, it's fine. If it is like a control deck, if it's full of interaction, if it's a humans deck, if it's elves, like whatever it is, stacks, I don't mind it, because actually I like to play against different decks. I like to try and figure my way out around trying to get around these decks, and I think actually it makes me a better deck builder, because all of a sudden I start thinking to myself, okay, what would I have needed in that game? Okay, I needed A, B, or C. Me and Dom have both got someone we know, our local LGS, that plays like a Glacial Chasm in like a Landsfall deck, and unless you've got land destruction or or removal of land, you're just locked out. So actually it makes me, as much as I don't run land destruction in it, I do make sure I run 2 pieces of like permanent removal or a Field of Ruin or anything like that, because there is nothing worse when you're sat there like, I can't deal with this. And
yeah, the old Feel the Dead thing as well, isn't it? It's something you can't interact with that easily.
Yeah, it is what it is. So, but I personally don't mind it. And actually, if someone sort of said, "Oh, I've got a bit of a, it's quite powerful, but it's a bit janky at the same time, or it's silver bordered," or like, I'm literally like, show me what you got. I want to see this, because I like to see powerful stuff, janky stuff, or even if it's like a really like bizarre win, it'd be like, I've never seen that, but that is awesome. Like, I want to see that sort of stuff, and I want to encourage people to play that other than just high power or precon, or I don't want to sit down at a table with someone that's having any controlling element, any stacks element, any graveyard element, or blah blah blah. You said any like, so we're doing creatures, which is fine, but like, do you not want to broaden your horizons a bit more? No, I will turn sideways with my elves. Fine. Okay, no worries.
I think hearing all these things is really, really interesting, because I think one of the best things about, because just linking the two together, because we're talking about Commander and we're going to go into 1v1, I think you said. One of the things that makes me such an enjoyable Commander player to play with, which I'm that's not an ego thing, I'm not saying I'm really fun to play with, right? Is that when I play Commander, I actually like, if you win, great. Like I literally it's Commander, so I'm not like, I am trying to win because I'm trying to do the best play I can, but I'm never going to be like, oh, I wish I could have won or anything like that, because I have 1v1 for that. And we were recording with the Gathering the Magic lads at the weekend, and one of the guys, Steve, he likes to win, and he plays to win, like CDH and stuff like that. I'm desperately trying to get him to play other formats, because I'm trying to say to him, like, you love winning, and if you love winning, you will love 1v1, because in that it's a zero fun format, so one person has all the fun. And so it's like, if you're winning, you have all the fun, and it's great, but the other person isn't like salty about it, because it's like a competitive game. So I really enjoy playing both, because what you're saying there about picking your deck, whatever, that's what I'm like. Really, I'm like, play whatever you want. And when you picked that deck, I'm playing my sleeveless deck that I'm riffle shuffling. Sorry, listeners. And the rest of it with cards that aren't worth anything, people have drawn all over them and everything like that. But I enjoy playing that, and I've got no problem with you wanting to play something more powerful. The good thing about Commander is it's a great equalizer. So if you're getting really ahead, or you, as you did, played a 3-mana Teferi, which was also a foil stained glass one, I think, as well. Probably worth more than my deck. Wally and I go, that's a problem, and we work together to beat that. So it's a bit self-fulfilling. So I'd say, if you're someone who's like, oh, don't play that deck because I can't beat that, or I can't have fun that way, maybe try other formats as well, because in that one, you really can just play the deck you want, and you're not going to have any kind of conversation around that. You're trying to win, and your opponent is trying to win, and there's something that's actually like a little bit more honest about that as well. There's less ambiguity.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head. I mean, look, we've been skirting around this, so let's just crash into it. So the main meat of today's pod, we're going to be talking about Standard. We're going to talk about sort of our experiences in the Standard, the state of Standard in a minute, what can be done if we feel like anything else needs to be done. And this is why we invited Christian on here. I thought he'd be a perfect person to talk about this. But I feel like we've talked about that sort of social side of things that you don't have to deal with in 1v1. So I know in one of your previous pods, Christian, you were talking about most players either start into EDH and then move over into like a competitive format, or vice versa, they start into a competitive format and then move over to it. So, and the two don't sort of really cross, sort of thing. Whereas interestingly enough, my start was a little bit different, because I started off, I'm going to say competitive, I don't mean competitive. I played Standard initially. Yeah. And that was my bread and butter. That's how I learned to play. I mean, my piloting skills were atrocious, but I was playing. Let's put it like that. And I loved it. I loved playing it as at a time pre-COVID, when we could sit down in front of people. There was regular games, bish bash bosh, blah 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 blah. For me, then COVID swung in and put a stop to that. Now I know you can spell table, and there's nothing wrong with spell table. Personally, I like to flip the cards in front of people and sit in front of another person while doing it. So, that was my choice. Then as we got to the tail end of it, like, it was this explosion of Commander, and it was like, well, we'll give it a go. I've just spent the last X amount of months not being able to play, whatever. I've been looking at building, my friends are building Commander decks, and went back and played into Commander. And then Commander has been my staple, I would argue, pretty much is my staple at the minute. Whereas maybe sort of 6 months ago, I started to think, actually, I'm not a competitive person, but I've got a competitive itch, and I want to start playing more competitive. So I built a Pauper deck, done some recording with it, but more importantly, started playing it, and I loved Pauper. For me, it's like playing. I don't know if you've ever watched old Pro Tour games, but so they are obviously the power level is less, but it felt like that. It felt really good. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for Pauper personally. I love it. I think you can pick yourself up a meta deck for a really low price, and even a mid-tier one that's not costing you a lot of money. You're playing good Magic, and you're getting the competitive juices going. The 60 format, format is completely different. I just kind of want to sort of say that's the big difference, is that 60 card format. The fact you can have 4 of instead of that commander is massive. Those absolute crucial cards, depending on what deck you're playing. For me, a lot of the sort of control-y decks, it will be sort of counter magic or removal, get lost, that sort of stuff, and board wipes, and then moving towards your end game, whatnot. With Pauper, for me, I'm playing Is It Delver, and I absolutely love playing that deck. I had a chat with Emma Partlow while we was at the CommandFest, and we're just chatting about it, and it's really good fun. It just gets flames, fans those flames, sorry, is what I'm trying to say, and gets it really going. And I feel like it's something that is missing from Magic in general at the minute. But what do you think about that, Christian? Because you're in the scene, you're playing competitive Magic. I know you play a lot of different formats. Before we go into that, where did your competitive side of things start? Let's start a bit more of the beginning, really. It's probably the best place to start.
I prefer to start in the middle usually, and then go off on 2 tangents in different directions.
Well,
so I'll make an exception.
I'm trying to hold this together. Have some
Welcome to the pod.
So starting at the very beginning, my first sort of Magic the Gathering game was on the Xbox games, Jewels of the Planeswalker or something like that.
Wow.
That was my first foray into Magic. I'd never heard of it, but I was enticed by the art, so played that. Then years later, I'd been through my going out and getting drunk and all that type of phase, that sort of like early 20s phase, and then a bit more settled. My friend took a picture in like an LGS somewhere, and there was a picture of Magic the Gathering in the background. I was like, oh, I'd like to try that. Because I remember playing that and it was really good. And now I actually have a bit of a disposable income, which I didn't have when I was a kid. And so I was actually the first one of my group of friends to get into Magic at all. So I went down to found an LGS. I bought the deck when I was there. It was a Commander night. The reason I started with Commander was because that was the night it was. I didn't have any idea. And also I could buy a deck, which I'll come back to in a second. I could buy a deck that was fully functional while I was there. And that was the Bant Precon with the Planeswalker. Is it Astrid or something? Yeah, that was really. And my first foray into Magic was an 8-player Commander game.
Oh, wow.
I came second in somehow. Wow. I had no idea what was going on. And the community gave me a load of cards and explained, and they were all Commander players and all the rest of it. And they, got me started, and I built some decks. And it was years before I got any of my friends to actually play. But to answer your question, that was my sort of start, because I know you're talking about how you first got into Magic. And then when it came to like 1v1, I had a feeling that I really wanted to get into 1v1 because I played a lot of Arena during COVID. And I was like, I wanted to start, and I thought Pioneer's a good one. So I turned up to Pioneer night at my LGS, and there was nobody there. I was the only one there. They were like, we're really sorry, thank you for making the journey. They actually gave me like a little prize pack for coming in, for saying, thank you for coming in. And I said, I'm going to make this format a thing. And so I found someone else, Stefanos, who really wanted to make it a thing as well. And then we started a WhatsApp group. We pinched some modern players, some other Commander players who were interested. We started the ball rolling with Pioneer. Now, I built what I call a Pioneer Pigeons deck, which used Safara and loads of flyers to cheat it out. It was similar to a standard deck I played on Arena. It's like a Zorius aggro.
Okay.
And I then took that to Pioneer, and it didn't do particularly well, but we started showing up. And that's the most important thing. So I hear a lot of people saying about 1v1 stuff, and I'm not yet talking about competitive. I'm talking about F&M level, which is kind of different.
Yep.
What you need to do is, to start your communities, you need to turn up. Probably just 2 or 3 of you just need to turn up, and it'll grow from there. And then what happened was, we had in Liverpool an RCQ. I'd changed my deck by then. I built an actual deck, which is mono white humans, because I was still learning the format, so I wanted to build something simple. And I top 8'd the RCQ, and I caught the bug for competitive Magic. I was like, oh, and it's actually giving me goosebumps thinking about it, because that thing that I've been driving for, because it is like Commander's fun, and it's having a game with your beers. To me, that's what it's like. You're having a game with your friends and beers. I don't know if I said that right. And then basically, this was like, actually, this is a really good outlet for me. And I've always said to people, I've got ADHD, and as someone who's neurodivergent, having something that I really have to focus on is actually really relaxing for me. So I started to really enjoy it. I went to the next day or the next week, I drove to Castleford to do another RCQ because I enjoyed it that much, and I won that RCQ. And I was like, I am really enjoying playing competitive Magic, because if you've ever won an RCQ, like by the end of the day, it's a long day. It's like you play 8-9 rounds of Magic, and I was like, oh, this is incredible. And that was my journey into being a competitive player. Obviously, that I'll stop there at that point in the sort of the journey. But since then, we've done loads more. But the main thing that I did there was actually just go, I'm not accepting that there's no community for this format. I will build one if that's going to be the case. And I think if people have that attitude, what they'll find is there are other people who want to build that community as well. And once you've got 3 or 4 players, I've made some of the best friends I've ever made in my life by making that decision. So I'd encourage other people to do it as well, because one of the main things I hear is, oh, I'd love to, but there's no scene for it. Go out and make it.
Yeah, I think that is, I mean, that's an incredible story, and I love hearing that, because we do have a slight issue in our LGS with certain formats firing. Weirdly enough, the thing that seems to fire the most is they have a consistent legacy night on Thursday, I think it is. Yeah. And I've been down a couple of times. I've not been in for a while, but again, it's something I want to get back to. But it always seems to be there. It's constant. And that's one of the guys, I think the heads up is Martin, that seems to be really spearheading it. And again, it's just, like you sort of said, you've got to be there, you've got to turn up. If you don't, that's where the cracks start to show, and it falls across. Obviously, it's not demanding. You always need to be there. But as a community, it's about coming together to put something on so everyone can join in. We have definitely struggled with that with Standard recently. We had a spate of time where Pioneer was really popular, where Pauper was really popular, where Modern was really popular. So we seem to have an LGF that seems to swing a little bit. At the minute, it's currently, I think it's Blood Bowl's the thing that's weirdly really popular at the minute, which is it's absolutely great. There's nothing wrong with that. I do think it's one of those things that, like what you said, if there was we're going to start doing A, B, and C, I think the people would rally around together and it would build back up again. Would it stay consistent? I don't think it would. But I feel like when you needed it, or if everybody wanted to work together, I know there are groups within our LGS that, particularly Modern, they will practice together. They will deck tech. They will play test, all this sort of stuff. Which is really nice to hear. I'd like to see a little bit more of that, really.
And I can ask you a couple of questions on that. Sorry, I don't know if Don was ready to speak then, so apologies. You got to hear a bit more of me. You've said obviously legacy is fine, which is great, and that's really, really good. And we've got Josh in our team, who's a big legacy player. Interestingly, you're saying how consistent it would be. What I would say is most LGSs, and this is the caveat, do have a base of Commander players. That is something they do have. They do have. Yep. Now, my passion at the moment is, how do we not get them to play it and convince them to play all the time? How do we get Commander players to try that 1v1 format? And the reality is, you mentioned Modern for an example, or Pioneer, and it might not fire or something like that. But I bet you the people who are passionate about those formats, probably particularly Modern, will have more than one deck.
Yeah, 100%.
Now this is the thing is, Commander players will often go, oh, I don't want to invest into that format. It's fine, you don't have to. I always bring a spare deck with me, so that if a new player comes, and I'll sit with them, I'll teach them how to play that deck, or how to enjoy that format. And I think that, it's not scary. It genuinely isn't scary. Like you probably play 1v1 on Arena. Like I don't know many Commander players who haven't at least played Arena a little bit, or MTGO or something like that. They tend to have played something else. And it's just taking that to paper, and you get all that great social aspect, and the players there are there to help you. They want you to come. When it's Commander, it's great because it's casual. But the F&M vibe, whether it's Tuesday, Thursday, whatever, I'll refer to them all as F&M, is also a casual vibe. It's just that in that game, you're trying to win. But everyone is really. So, like, I would encourage, though, if that's your challenger in LGS, just see if you can get one or two Commander players to give it a go. Come down, have a go at 1v1. And the Battle Chaz did a great podcast of this with Wally, where they talk about why it's good for Commander players to try that other format. But I think the onus is on us as experienced players to create the start of that community, so that when new players turn up, they can play. And the start of that is have spare decks, and just even if it's just you and your friend going to sit in the LGS to go back and forth and play some games, if you're there, you never know that day that someone else is going to turn up and go, oh yeah, I've just moved here, I'm a student, or things like that, and then they'll jump in and play the game. We've had that happen so many times in Liverpool, and these are now players who come every week, and we love having them. They're now our friends, so go play 1v1.
Okay, I mean, I've got a couple of ideas. I think we've already pre-spoke about this already, Christian. But I've got a couple of ideas that would help in that type of scenario. But Dom, what do you think? Why is this happening then? So Christian's just made a really good point there, which is I think, and I 100% agree with you, Christian. I think Commander players should play more 1v1 Magic, particularly Standard. But why do you think people aren't? Why do you think Commander players are? I'm being general here, because obviously there will be some that won't and will and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of generalization here. But why do you think there's a little bit of turning of noses up at this and like, that's not for me, that I just want to sit here and jam like Commander?
Yeah. So, I mean, my route into Magic was via Standard, actually. It was the WoW TCG got cancelled, and I picked up my first Standard deck, which is Golgari mid-range, make some assassins, rogues passage them in, and you win the game. Great fun, yeah. I loved that deck with all my heart, and then rotation happened, and the whole deck rotated. And then EDH kind of came to the forefront there. But I think, obviously, in the modern era, you've got Arena as well. You can play Standard for free. But I think, whilst it might be taking some players away, I think it can be a route into the format, definitely. I'm a huge advocate for going to pre-releases. I think, actually, if you're trying to get someone who's used to playing Commander into competitive format, pre-release is a great event to go to, because you get to build out, you see the latest cards, half those cards you can end up putting in your Commander decks anyway after the event, right? So, and you might get inspired by one of these cards that's performed really well for you. Oh, I'd love to build a deck around that. And that can just plant the seed of taking you into that competitive format, and you get to meet new people. Sometimes you rock up to the LGS, you play with your same pods all the time, but it's a great way to meet new people, play games with them, and it's great. But I mean, in our area, it's difficult because obviously Wizards are pushing at the moment. You've got the Standard showdowns, so that's a good way of getting people into it. But like you say, you need the community behind you. But I'm wondering whether maybe we should just turn up. I would love to play Standard, but I don't have a deck, right?
Right. Okay. So I want to filter back it. This leads in really nicely to my position. So I honestly think, right. So I've done some recording recently, and I'm just looking over some editing of the starter kit. Actually, I've got it here, or I've got one of them here. So this starter kit. So they're about to change it, because we're
getting a Bloomburrow one.
We're getting a Bloomburrow one, and I'm looking forward to giving it a like that. But the beautiful thing about the thing I love about it is it's 15 quid. I think it's even less than that. And you can shuffle up those decks. They're pre-constructed. They're ready to rock and roll, and it gives you a taste of Standard. I'm not going to say it's competitive Standard, but it is Standard. There is, they're built in a particular way. I mean, bang for buck, they're just fantastic. I would argue, I know the route has been for a long time, to learn Magic, go on Arena, particularly for 1v1. I mean, I honestly, I think if you can get a friend involved and sit down, you can learn together. I think that product is the gateway to Magic, because as much as Arena is easy, you have to do your dailies to get your cards, all that sort of stuff without investing. We'll push all that to one side. But I think for 14, 15 quid, I think you can have a lot of fun with that. You can play, swap the decks around, and then you learn that deck and you play it again. I think you get a lot of good Magic for not a lot of money. But I think it takes me on to the next point, which I think will help people gateway into it, is that I've got one underneath here. What are they called? Challenger decks. That's right. I think there needs to be more challenger decks. And
hard agree.
So
yeah,
in fact, I've got these two that are quite old now, but these are for Pioneer. But honestly, these are fantastic, and there weren't a lot of money. And if someone sort of said to me, if I know they're going to be doing some more challenger decks at some point soon, but honestly, hand on heart, I think if someone said, I want to play a control-y deck or a stompy deck, blah, 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 I would honestly sort of say, buy one of these, play with it, learn the deck, and then upgrade how you want this deck to run. Because it's the halfway house. Instead of going out and getting a deck, we'll come on to the meta in a minute, because I do want to discuss the meta, but I'm just having a little look here. And obviously these are, rough prices. But one of the top tier at the minute is Esper mid-range. I mean, a tabletop price, you're looking, just shy of $500. I mean, if you've got that sort of money, great, but not everybody has. I honestly can't remember what I paid for this challenger deck, but it was
less than that.
It was considerably less than that, and it gives you a functional deck that works. I know this is Pioneer, but I think they are, honestly, I think they are brilliant. They're not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but it is, I think that's the first taste of a constructed deck that you can get used to and start to improve, to take to your local FNM, to your local Pioneer standard events, whatever it may be, and then start to upgrade and start to learn the meta and start to work your way up. Instead of just going balls deep and going, I'm going to spend $500 on this.
Yeah. What I will say as well, just to interrupt, squeezing a word in edgeways.
Of course.
They have been trying to improve the route to market for these challenger decks. Mm-hmm. So I think the last one came a lot quicker, and obviously that's something they can. Obviously, Wizards are working on to bring them to market faster, so they don't release, a couple of months before rotation. And obviously, they've increased the rotation to 3 years now as well. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I guess will come out in the wash. But
we can,
if it's a way to get new players in, brilliant.
Yep.
At the end of the day, your card's going to last for longer.
Yep.
So that's probably a good thing all round. And they need to be a bit more aggressive with bans, but the meta, I would say, is quite healthy. Based on, I didn't get a chance to watch too much of the Pro Tour because I was working all weekend. But, the top 8 was very diverse.
So, right, I want to come back onto the meta. I just want to, we can come back to this literally in a minute, but Christian, what do you think about these challenger deck type things? From your perspective, what are your thoughts on them, pros and cons, effectively?
It's a massive pro. The cons are all technical stuff. So the philosophy of them and the idea of them is perfect. They should definitely do them. The timing, I think Dom's covered.
100%.
When it comes to the contents of the deck, sometimes that can leave a little bit to be desired, especially around the mana base. But I understand that they can't just print 4 Steam Vents into the Phoenix one.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't do it. It should have had 4 Phoenixes in it. But that deck, basically, if you bought 2 of them, you pretty much had the deck.
Yeah.
So, and I know the Hidden Strings one, the Lotus Field combo, was pretty much complete. But definitely not the deck to start the format with.
No.
Yeah. But I really like them. And I think that's what I was saying to you before about when I started Commander. I was able to buy a deck and play that evening in the LGS. And that is a great conveyor belt of that buyer experience into playing experience for the player and for the LGS and for the community as well. Having someone turn up and be able to do it. Because it's not always possible for people to have more than one deck, So it's like, I live in the real world, so like I'm lucky enough to be able to afford to have 2 standard decks and 2 Pioneer decks, but that isn't the case for other people. So I think that it's a really needed product, and I would love if there was ever the opportunity to work around that product or the release of that product with Wizards. That's something that I think we could really get right to drive new players into store, because I also think that new players' first experience should be Commander. I think it's too complex for a new player, and those decks are a much better level. Hidden Strings Lotus Field aside, because that one is too complex for a new player. But that Gruul one is like, they can play that out of the box.
It's great.
Go Stumpy.
Yeah, it's great. It really is. I know what you're saying about the more complicated sort of Lotus one, but also I think it's good to have that type of product out there. And I want to revert back to the timey-wimey deck from the Doctor Who precons. I've spoke to Dom about this. Like, I've got it. I've played it a few times. I find for what's supposed to be a sit down, have fun, it's too complex for me. For me personally, it's not the type of deck that I want to play. I know I play some absolute filthy decks, but it's not the deck for me. It's a bit too much thinking ahead and all this sort of stuff and blah, 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 blah. But
I playing it dressed as a TARDIS, Alex, is what I was going to say.
I was about to refer to you and your TARDIS.
I was also ill as well. So if you've not seen that episode of Chad Magic, I built myself a TARDIS outfit, and I could only see basically the person opposite to me board. I couldn't see anyone else board, including my own. Yeah. I think probably one of the most complex precons they've ever printed, if not the most complex precon they've ever printed. Yeah.
And it happens to be the most popular Doctor, right? So if you're going into your store, you might grab that one because you like David Tennant, right?
Yeah.
So that was.
Eccleston's the best. Sorry.
Okay, touche.
Yeah.
We won't get into who's the best Doctor.
Let's not get bogged down into that. We could probably do a pod on that by itself. But.
Yeah.
But just touch about these challenge decks. I actually would want to go one step further, and I know there would be a price point issue, and I understand. I think these could be a really good gateway into other formats, particularly Modern. And I know there's price issues there. I 100% understand that, but I think they could make it, particularly the price of So look, we've all been playing long enough that we'll remember when shock lands were big money, and they're still decent money, and when fetch lands were big money. Fetch lands have come down considerably recently, and I would argue shock lands are at a stable-ish price where, I'm not saying they load them up with all 4 ofs, but you could have a couple of or something like that. I think I would really like to see a modern version of a challenger deck, just as a bit more of a gateway into, you could do mono red. I mean, it wouldn't be what I'd want to play, but it's a cheaper version of all that sort of stuff. I think I think what you said there, Christian, was perfect. You went into your LGS on a Commander night, you grabbed a Commander product off the wall, bought it, played with it. And I think, coming full circle back to what we were saying, if the community is there, and it is on us, it's on all of us experienced players to rock up, and as much as we moan and groan, and we'll come back to moan and groaning in a minute, but it is on us to rock up and play, and then more importantly, it's there to integrate new players. Like you said, someone rocked up, we've all had similar experiences where we've gone into a new place, and all you just want is someone that's like, hello buddy, how can I help you? Oh great, I'm new to the game. Right. Okay, let me talk you through this. And that's why I think LGSs are the backbone of Magic, and I always have, and I always refer to that. But when it comes to the gateway into these things, I think these products are great. It's fine if you've got, say, someone like yourself, Christian, that will have an extra deck, but it's nice to test. But if you're looking to get into it, and if you're looking to try it, I do think these products are great. I really do.
I feel like if you have no community at your LGS, you could literally, talk to your LGS, actually get enough people, just do a starter deck, standard tournament, right?
100%.
You could actually do that.
100%.
And whilst they're not, full standard deck precon, actually as a way to give someone, an idea, obviously the store's probably supported with promos anyway. They could, so organising an event, you sit down with your friend, you open the starter deck, you play, and then you move around and play other people. There's that kind of thing that you can do quite easily.
So speak to your LGS owner about starting something to do with standard night or anything like that, and they're probably receiving promos for it that they may or may not be giving you. So if they've got the promos, there's lots of things. There's that Sarkhan and stuff like that. There's the standard showdown. There's loads of great stuff. So LGSs are really incentivized to make standard happen, but it is up to those people in the community. So don't take no for an answer. You get them commander players playing some standard.
I think our issue. So this is not an LGS issue in our area. It just seems to be, like I said, the community floats from format to format, and it's really weird because you rock up to some of these things and it's just died a death, and then you rock up to some of them and it's mental busy. But I take your point. You've got to be in it to win it, and it's definitely something that I am looking forward to do a little bit more. I would like to get a bit more competitive. I'd like to start competing, and it's something that I'm doing it a bit of a slow way. I feel like I'm doing it, for me personally, the right way. I want to be in a position where I'm playing a deck, I'm learning the deck, I'm cutting my teeth with it, I'm trading things out. I want to be able to build a deck. I always have conversations with people. It's like, oh, what do you think about this? Or I want to build around this. And the common thing I get is like, look at the meta decks. I'm like, I don't want to look at the meta decks. Like, I know what the meta decks say. I want to be that person that rocks up and my deck is not a meta deck. But do you know what? I'm going to bloomin' learn how to tune it and how to make it better and things like that. Like,
you can play decks that are good against the meta decks, right?
100%. Just because it's a meta deck, it doesn't mean it's gonna win.
Go.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say one more thing just before we move on to the meta and stuff like that, which is another reason why maybe if you want to go down is trades, because if you are a commander player and you go down to a Pioneer night, let me tell you, they will take loads of cards out your binder and give you good money for them, and you will probably they will have loads of cards in their binder that you'll really want, because like those like lands that aren't playable in Commander or a Paw or whatever are really, really good, and stuff like that. So that's what often I turn up to Commander night with my trades and just go in and just buy. Like I got like my wedding announcements and stuff like that, which is terrible in Commander, but there's so many decks in Standard and Pioneer that need 4. So like the trades, even if you don't fancy the other format, go check out the night and maybe do a bit of trading.
Trades is always a good option. It's definitely something, as a child I managed to trade up to good decks. This is before I played Magic, but do you know what I mean? Trading is a real key to it, because actually someone may sort of say, oh, well, the value's a little off, but, a lot of the times people be like, well, you're building a deck for a standard, aren't you? Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. Don't worry about that extra, whatever it is. Obviously, people might even just give it to you. Like you said, they go through their bulk and be like, oh, what are you doing with this card? Nothing. You can have it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Like, that's awesome. Sit down and talk. It's about the gathering, isn't it, at the end of the day? Sit down with your mates, whatnot. Get on chats, and I know it can be really difficult because like sometimes we can have this. You'll sit on a chat, and I know ILGS had a massive problem with this. That people just send in these massive lists, and they're like, you're asking for a nondescript common from a set from a million miles away. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really difficult in that respect. Actually, on that note of RLGS has actually just stopped doing singles, and I think it's a real crying shame. I know why they've stopped doing it. Basic card market is killing them. But again, it comes down to our community. Our community doesn't use it enough, and they should be trading in and out. And I think it's a real shame, and I'm gutted it happened, if I'm honest with you. I really am.
Same thing happened to our LGS, but genuinely it's just not viable for them unless they are a real Magic the Gathering store, because you've got to have someone who knows about it and does it and stuff like that. So like I get it. There's other ones in the north that are really good for it though. So every time I'm over in Gemini Games in Huddersfield, shout out to them, they have singles, and honestly they're great. If the singles like really like overpriced for some whatever reason, he'll just go, oh no, actually it should be this, and then they'll give it to you for the right price. And so it great. I mean, I'm probably because I've lost the tournament really early. I spend too much time flicking through the singles binders. And I got loads of the alt art Japanese cards for my Kamigawa cube there.
Nice.
So
yeah. No, I think RLGS is the exact same position, which is a real shame. But I think that in itself could be another pod. Right. I want to talk about. Let's start to talk about the meta then, and then we can then start to talk about standards and the state of the meta, and where we think it's a good position, a bad position, what we think could help that or make it worse? Dom, like, I know obviously you're the same as me. We keep an eye on standard, more so than really dig into this. So what do you think about the state? I know you've already sort of said it, but for this sort of section, where do you think the state of standard appears to you, and what would you change, and or if anything, or what would you like to see?
Ooh, wow, what a question. I mean, like I was saying, so they just recently, over the weekend, they had the Pro Tour Thunder Junction,
which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Watch it back. And also, if you go to magic.gg, you can actually download all of these lists and play them like on Arena, and stuff like that, or Magic the Gathering Online as well. And there's some really interesting decks. You got like Esper mid-range, Timur Analyst. So it's quite
Crazy deck, that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
Do you know the one I was just talking to Christian before you rocked up, but I've been working my way back like through the earlier games and working up, and I saw Brian Kibler's Legends deck, 5-color Legends deck, and he was playing the mirror with the 4 colors, and it's just wild. The life goes really, really low, and it builds back up. It is awesome. And also, I love it when you hear of a competitor that has completely gone left field from the meta and gone, I'm going to do this. And they do really well. I love that. I'm always like, yes, do it. I hope you win. And I was absolutely rooting for Brian. I really, really was. But it wasn't to be, unfortunately. But yeah.
Legends is a really interesting deck because obviously you've got a lot of these cards that were, some of them are, I would say, clearly designed to be commanders, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But because they're so powerful, you can just jam them all in a deck, and it just works. It's like there's 2 4-color Legend decks in the top 8 as well. That just goes to show you, some of these cards that they're pushing out are just fun to play with as well.
The 5-color Legends deck reminds me of my Commander Cube. If you basically pull a 5-color commander and then you just draft all the commanders, like that, that's what it reminds me of. It's really incredible. And we had the Bronco deck. I was saying to our team chat, because we've got a competitive team, I was like, lads, I don't know what it's going to be, because I'm not the boffin, I'm not the how to do it guy, but there's going to be an Orzhov deck. I know there is. We've got the cards to do it. I just didn't anticipate it was going to be the Bronco that like deals damage when it's saddled up to the card's mana value. It's just crazy good.
It is crazy, isn't it? It's just mental. But go on.
I think if you can play 4 or 5 color, it's an interesting one, because is the mana base too good right now, or
it's going to rotate the time to rotate it.
That'll make a big difference.
What do you think about the mana base of it? Because I personally have felt that the mana base has held some architects, some decks back a little bit, but now we've just had the latest ones, obviously in Outlaws Junction and whatnot.
Our advantage for Boros Convoke is massive. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I feel like actually by staggering them, I think actually that helps, not hinders, because what it does is it like when you've got the allied lands, for argument's sake, particularly if you're going above mono or even arguably above 2, those lands will help massively. And then obviously you get the enemies into it and it will shift. So all of a sudden you have a period of time where those allied focused lands will really, really have a bit of a leg up, and then you introduce some other ones. But I
think with a 3-year rotation, you're always going to have quite a good mana base.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that in a minute, because I want to talk about the 3-year. But go on, Christian.
Yeah, so just before we get into too much of the mana base, because I think there was a question around like what the meta's like at the moment, and there's probably a couple of things I just wanted to mention about this, because I know, Alex, you talk about wanting to brew and make a deck that beats things. This meta is not solved. There are new decks all the time. Now, you do have your Esper, and you do have your Domain and stuff that's been around, but if you look at Domain, it's changed massively. I've been on Domain, and the list is really different. But you mentioned the Team of Lands deck. That was actually a PTQ deck that was a surprise to everybody from the last Magic Con. So that was a deck that took everybody by surprise, and now it's played all the time, because it was like, hang on a second, this deck's really good, and it's actually quite budget. Apart from the Nisses, it's like I think the deck's like 150 quid or something like that. That'll include the Nisses, I
with
believe.
the Nisses, yeah.
That's with the Nisses. So, and you can get a mono red deck for, I think, 65, 70 quid, and that would be fully optimized.
Yep.
So, like, the meta's not solved, and it is affordable unless you play domain. It's not if you play domain, because you need to remortgage your house to get a load of triomes. You don't have to play that deck. So the meta's not solved, which is great. I went to a different LGS Bulwark games on the Wirral, and their meta is really brewy. Like, so I'm there with my domain deck feeling a bit ashamed because I'm like, oh, here's my tier 1 standard deck. But their deck was like brewing the dinosaurs deck, and there's loads of cool stuff going on. And it's a brewer's paradise at the moment. Is standard, especially at F&M level. I've got a Rakdos Sacrifice deck, which isn't in the meta really, and that's really, really good fun. You're pinging opponents for 4 with the Oja from Ixalan, the red one. Really good fun. So there's loads of different room to play what you want in standard, and you can build a deck that's really janky, and you probably won't O3. You'll be able to do it. So that there's that real aspect of it, of the meta at the moment. At the top level, these are meta calls that are going on, but you see that people are turning up to the Pro Tour with new decks.
Yeah.
And that's so good to see. And that's my sort of view on the meta at the moment. To answer the question around the lands, I suspect that it will start to go into a 2-color format post the new triomes going out. I think that domain will go as a deck. It relies way too much on them. Esper not so much, but I think we'll see now that the meta will shift into those more powerful 2-color decks. And I think that you also monocolor as well. You'll be able to have like mono red and things like that. But I think like things like Orzhov is going to be really strong, I think, post rotation. But at the moment, the meta is kind of like, you have to account for there being Sunfall in the meta. It's like, for those who don't play standard, commander players only, Sunfall's a bit like the farewell of, even though farewell is legal, but it's a bit like that one. It's exiles all the creatures, and so it can stop aggro decks a little bit. But I think that things are going to change all the time, and post rotation I think is the perfect time to start playing standard, because all those triomes that were making the top decks expensive are going, and you're going to be able to like really pick up. You've got the new fast lands, you've got the surveil lands and stuff like that, and these are at the moment pretty cheap pickups for building those decks. So yeah, there's going to be a lot happen post rotation. We're going to talk about rotation, I think, as well, but that's sort of my view on the meta and the land situation.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think you're dead right. If you're like myself, if you're looking to build decks, the problem is we all know that the key to a competitive meta deck is its land base. It always has been. It's the same with any format, whether it be Commander, whether it be Legacy, Vintage, any of that sort of stuff. Like it is what it is. But actually, I think what you've just said there is dead right about the triomes. Like, so post rotation, the dual coloured ones, they're quite, I'd say, maybe not low, but they are at a reasonable-ish price. I think now's a good time to pick up, because I think once that rotation happens, people will then start to lean more into it. Oh, well, I'm only now doing 2-colour. I'm going to do this. I don't have them. Yeah. I think those prices will spike up a little bit. But the good thing for the commander players is those triomes will go down in price a little. But it's always a good thing. I mean, those triomes are always going to be great in modern and other stuff like that. But that's another format. But I think now is a good time. So while we're sort of winging around rotation, I'm going to be controversial here. I don't like the 3-year rotation. I don't like it.
No.
I'm going to tell you the reason why. And it's simple, and it's going to sound really backwards. I've been scorned. We've probably all been scorned by the 2-year of rotation full stop. Of, I've just got into this meta deck, blah, blah, blah. Actually, interestingly enough, we'll come back to it in a minute. And then all of a sudden rotation happens, and you're like, great, that's half of my deck gone. Or it is basically unplayable because it's missing A, B, or C in the key cards. I actually feel like 2-year was... I think 2-year was right, personally. The problem is with the 2-year is we were playing Hangover from Eldraine, and this is why I think people went, we need 3-year, / we can use our cards for 3 years more so than 2. But The only issue I have with that is we've now got 3 years of. I'm going to use this as an example because I don't honestly think this is purely just a problem, but we've now got 3 years of cards like Sheldred, where is quite dominant. You know,
you can ban it though. So, but also you've only ever lived.
We fixed it. On it.
Standard sorted.
Yeah.
Standard solved. You heard it here first. That can be your thumbnail.
You've only ever lived in a world where cards have been designed with a 2-year rotation in mind.
Yep.
I think until we get to the stage where actually they've planned for and adapted the design to fit into a 3-year rotation, that's when that'll be the acid test.
I appreciate
so at the moment you've got a 3-year rotation with a 2-year design, and obviously that will cause problems, but I think once you've got into the thing of it, it might bring the power level down, but it'll be spread across a larger number of sets.
So I think there are pros and cons to it. I actually am I swing some days from one to the other on it. Overall, I don't like it for a couple of different reasons. The first is it drives up the cost of staples.
Sorry, just to clarify, you're not a fan of the 3-year rotation or the 2-year?
Not a fan of the 3-year rotation. Okay. I'm not like I've got one foot in each camp.
Yeah, I hear
kind of thing. Because I think there are pros and cons. But I think overall there are two things. First of all, I think having the 3-year rotation increases the cost of staples quite significantly, because they're not going to come in and out. There's not that kind of like, well, actually, is it really worth 80 quid for a shield? Well, yeah, it is, because you're going to play it for ages. But I think it means there are a lot of cards printed that will never see the light of day in a deck, which is a real shame. And sometimes you'll pull a card in like a pre-release or just like from a pack, and you'll be like, this is really cool, I'd like to build a deck around this, and it never gets the support it needs to make it into a deck. It just never gets that. I think that because what we kind of move towards is that sort of like more mid-range or more color soup, which is what we've actually had in standard a little bit, because you've got for example, like Kamigawa, loads of playables in that set, and then Streets of New Capenna brought in the other triomes. The fact that these are still played and stuff like that, it does create, I think, a little bit of that. It's actually the power level's a little bit high, and there's just too much reason to play more colors. So I think that they will solve that. I think Dom's raised a really good point there about what cards are coming and how they manage that. But I think ultimately the really good thing about it is that you don't have that pain of the rotation the same, or at least it's coming.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's still going to happen. You're still going to lose your deck, and your deck may shift in the meta anyway. But I suppose this allows them to manage the power creep a little bit better too, in having that 3-year rotation. It's an interesting one, and I think there are pros and cons. But as a new player coming in, to the first one, if they're building their deck, their staples are going to be more expensive.
This brings me on just a quick little side note here, because actually this is something that I think needs to be said more. If you're going to your local Friday Night Magic or any event like that, you don't need to worry about meta decks. And what I mean by that is you don't need to look at this list. I've got it pulled up right here. You don't need to look at this list and go, I need to take one of these to my next Friday Night Magic, because actually that is far from the truth. I think you find a card you're interested, or a style of play you're interested in, and go and play it. And you know what? You may already have half of it because you've got some in the Commander deck or something like that. I think Kibler's example of that Legends deck, if you're playing Commander, you know what Joda is. You know how powerful it is. And if you've got that deck, you've probably got one of all of these cards already. So all of a sudden, I would argue that Legends deck is probably a bit fringe. There will be valuable cards in there, but it won't be Sheldreds or anything like that. Just go play, go have fun. I've definitely been guilty of this. I've been chasing meta decks where actually you don't need to. Just go have fun, go upgrade what you want to play. And if you feel like you are in a scenario where you're going to Friday Night Magic and 2/3 are playing Esper Midrange, Domain, Boros Convoke, Mono Red, whatever, Azorius Control, then you might have to, or you have a conversation with other people, because there might be the other third might be like, I just want to jam my Elf Soli in Standard or whatever. Go have conversation with those people and adjust. But I think I've definitely been guilty of this, but I think we can all be a little bit guilty of this if we want to play Standard, or particularly if we want to play a good level of standard, I'm not going to say high competitive level, we look to the meta, and I think we need to stop doing that as a community. We need to start thinking, what do I want to build? I'm going to build this. Great. I'm going to go build it. I'm going to go have fun with it. There's always times and examples when you rock up there and someone's got the meta deck that absolutely curb stomps you. It is what it is. Like, I think it's more on them than us as the rest of the community, but it's also going to happen wherever you go. And you could also be playing against that meta deck and they just don't do it and you win.
No, I think it's important to find a style of deck that you enjoy playing as well, right? So it's like, if you do enjoy playing aggro, you got like the Boris Convoke and things like that. Even
I would say with the Boris Convoke deck as well, most of that deck is a Pioneer deck as well. So it's really, really similar. So I would actually say, if you were looking to try 1v1, you weren't sure if it was Standard or Pioneer, if you get the pieces for Boris Convoke, you've pretty much got the deck. It's really, really similar.
That's actually what I'm looking to do with my Pioneer and Modern decks. I'm looking basically that there'll be interchangeable cards. So I'm looking at doing Izzet Phoenix and Izzet Murktide. Now, I know there are cards in there that you can't, but there are cards that are just straight one to the other. So there'll basically be one deck that interchange with two separate sideboards. I've got like basically a box that will, and that's what I'm looking to do, because I'm trying to negate, instead of only, I only need, 4 shock lands, because you only need 4 in each one of those decks. So it helps with the land base as well as anything else. So if you just think, it's also a style of Magic I like playing. Like, the Delver, my Izzet Delver, it's very much very, very similar. Put spells in the graveyard, use those spells, or, all that sort of neck. It's not exactly like for like, but it's a very similar style. Once you find a style you like, just lean into it. And then there are ways. You don't have to have, 8 shock lands because you want to play some Modern and you want to play some Pioneer. I think, realistically, I can be a bit guilty of this, but you don't ever really need any more 4 ofs than those staples. Who needs 8 or 12 Sheldrids? And who's doing that, by the way? I mean, I'm sure there are people out there, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I can understand that when you're flicking between, but you can only play one deck at a time. And if you're going somewhere to play Standard, you're probably playing Standard. You're probably not playing Modern. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, build according to what you're going to go and play.
There's always something new that comes along. I remember when I was playing Standard, obviously way back when now, and then Theros came out, and then you had the Mono Blue Devotion deck was absolutely stomping in our local meta anyway.
I like that.
So I ended up putting 4 of the Hydras that have protection from blue, can't be countered.
Yeah.
With haste. And
like that.
Yeah, that so you had that in your sideboard. It's like, oh, I'm against mono blue again. Pop these in. Here we go. Off to town. And it's like, there will always be a sideboard that you can use to, shuffle around your deck. Some decks even have like full transformational sideboards, right? So it totally changes the way the deck plays. And it will be a lot dependent on your local meta, what everyone's playing as well.
You've touched there on sideboarding, by the way, because I know this is another reason sometimes people say that they're a little bit maybe not intimidated, but there's something that's another skill I've got to learn, and all the rest of it. And the lads did a really good podcast on sideboarding on Battle Chads, if people want to check that out, to help people learn a little bit more about why you sideboard and why it's good. But what I would say is, that was one of the things I was intimidated about when I first started. But sideboarding is actually really there to help you, because you'll have some matchups which will be really difficult for you to deal with because your game plan A doesn't work, so you need to try and B, or they're doing something that's so strong that you need specific cards to bring in against that deck. So, like for example, if you've ever been against a Muldrova Spore Frog deck and they're playing the Spore Frog over and over again and you have no way to interact with it, that doesn't happen in 1v1 because you actually have the cards in the sideboard. So maybe game 1 it doesn't go your way, but game 2 and 3 they've got no graveyard. So, there are ways to do it. So I'd say sideboarding, don't be intimidated by that. It's actually really there to help you. And it's actually, it makes games really interesting. So, I quite like sideboarding now. Whereas at the start, I was like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah, that's
I think for most decks, sorry, there'll be a lot of good guides out there as well.
Yeah.
On why these cards are in the sideboard, when to bring them in, and like I say, for each, especially of the meta decks, there will be guides that you can read that explain why those cards are there, for certain matchups or things like that.
That's something I found as well. I mean, I'm the same boat as you, Christian. When I was playing Standard, I was terrible sideboarder, and I would never know exactly what to build to go in there. But I never went out of my way to look at the reasons why. I was a new Standard player, expecting myself to play like a seasoned professional. Well, not professional, but I mean, like someone that's played a lot of it. Sometimes you just have to sit there and go, do you know what? I'm learning this game, and I am going to get stomped, and I am going to lose, but there's nothing wrong with that. And although sometimes competitive players can get a bit of a bad rap for all they want to do is win, that's not been my experience, if I'm honest with you. A lot of my experiences is that if you sit down with a competitive player, they're there to help you. I've found that they're happy and prepared to help, but more importantly, they want to win, but they want to do it a good old-fashioned fair way. I don't think anyone, I'm sure you put your hand on your heart to this, Christian, I don't think anyone really wants to win by going, judge, there's a problem, blah, blah, blah. Now,
no, we're talking the very highest level that would happen, not at FNM.
Of course. And I think it's always important to know that. But the problem is as much as you say that, you've got to be really careful, because as much as we see stuff on the internet, we will see this stuff happen at the top level where it needs to happen. I think there's an argument. I know just the match I was watching this morning with Brian Kibler in the Mirror, they had to do that because there was a sideboard card in it, but they dealt with it in a really good way. They basically sort of said, we need to identify how many cards are in your that shouldn't be there, and they've just done a like for like. The judge shuffled and gave him a warning. And then, do you know what? That could have been, you're not allowed to do that. That could have been, they could have gone, nope.
Game loss.
But they didn't. And they done it in such a good way of doing it, because weirdly enough and hilariously enough, about 20 minutes later, Kibler was drawing off his library off a trigger, and he ended up taking 2 off, which should have been the last one. So he saw the second card instead of the first, and he got judge warning. They sort of said, look, we know it's an accident. You're going to shuffle anyway, so we can put it back, but we're going to give you a warning. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a judge doing a good thing. Judges are there to help the game and help you enjoy the game more so than to stop you playing it. I think it's important to say that.
Yeah. I think just to go back to what to kind of expect from an FNM, because the judge calls, it's definitely something that happens at like an RCQ level and above. But just on what people think of when they think of a competitive player, I think some of the negative connotations of competitive players actually comes from Commander pods, because when you play Commander with people who are really competitive, they get really salty in Commander. I've never had a salty experience that I can think of, but maybe I have, but I've never had one in 1v1 ever. A salty. I mean, there's been times I've been a bit salty in the back of my head. Turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Thoughtseize duress, turn 3 go blank, get wrecked. Like those type of things. But in terms of like the players, they're so respectful of each other, and they are never like, oh, I'd have won if this had which you get in Commander. You just do not get it. There's nobody being picked on. Oh, you guys have politicked against me or anything like that.
Yeah.
All those kind of things that kind of leave people to have a bad experience don't happen. The thing that you end up blaming in 1v1 is your deck rather than like someone not doing something. So I'd say is, if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to spend time with competitive players, it's not, competitive players is probably not the right way to describe them. They're just 1v1 enjoyers. The people who enjoy that experience of it's you versus me. There's no, oh, I'm going to manipulate this person next to me into doing things, or you don't have those feels bads. It's all fair magic. That's just what it is. Apart from ban Thoughtseize and Pioneer, please. But I know I'm in the minority on that.
No, you're definitely in the minority.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person in the world. If I could ban 5 cards in Pioneer, I'd ban Thoughtseize 5 times.
Yeah, I played in the Theros era, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
I did a lot of drafting in Theros as well. You'd always take the Thought Seize.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such a powerful card. It's the most played card in Pioneer.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're building a community as well, people aren't want to stomp you and then you not turn up the next week, right? Because then you've lost. Yeah. So there again, when you're trying to build a community, you have your game. Oh dear, I lost. But have you got your res folder with you? You have a chat, especially if you finish quickly or you got stomped. You've got time in between rounds to chat to them and get to know people.
And what we do with new players, we mentioned sideboarding before, is I let a deck to a new player. The more experienced players are perfectly happy for me to just completely show them how to sideboard against their matchup, because they don't want it to be like that they've taken out a life linker against mono red or something like that. They want to have the most enjoyable experience they can, and that community building aspect, Dom, as you said, so important. And I think that these communities self-police in a way, so that if anyone was ever like not wanting a new player to be there, that player is not as welcome as the new players. You always want to be growing, and if someone's got an issue or something like that, I mean, it just doesn't happen. But we want to create the best atmosphere we can for a new player, because we want new players. We really appreciate you. We love you. We want you to come in. We want you to try the game, and we want you to experience Magic as it's kind of intended to be played. The Commander for me is like a second format, and people are always surprised when I say this because I make Commander content. That's the content I make, but the real drive behind that is because I want people to enjoy what I enjoy, and then see that actually someone who plays 1v1 really enjoys Commander. Maybe I'm a Commander player who'd really enjoy 1v1, and there's never been a better time to play Standard than post rotation.
Yeah, I just want to reel back to what you were saying there, Christian, about salty players, because I actually have played with a salty 1v1 player, and there is nothing worse about it. But I think we need to call it what it is. It's not.
It wasn't me, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Hack Wars got heated.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to call it what it is, because we live in a day and age of polarization now, and you see one side of the story, you see the other side of the story, but what you don't see is the middle. When it comes to Magic, particularly in a competitive meta or an EDH, I think it's very easy to sort of look at, from an EDH perspective, look at the 60 card format and be like, oh, well, they're just sweaty and all they want to do is win. I've been a bit guilty of that, but that's either here or there. But it's also from the other side of from the 60 card format, and looking at Commander players like, oh, well, they're just like, all they want to do is doss around, blah, 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 blah. I don't think it's that at all. We're all players, and we're all there to have fun and do what we're supposed to do. I think what's quite easy is all you hear about, you're far likely to hear the negative than you are the positive. So whenever you hear, an issue that happened at your LGS with a particularly spiky player, I mean, we've had that in our LGS a little bit. People have come from all around the country because it's a good place to, get your RCQ ticket sort of thing. So what then happens is you hear, oh, someone was particularly spiky and just absolutely curb stomped someone that was new to it or anything like that. That is nothing on the competitive scene. It's that one individual. And I think that needs to be said more often, whether it's EDH. We've all sat down to a pod of EDH where someone's just come in and they've gone like, what level are you roughly playing? 7-ish, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And someone rocks up and you're like, dude, you're playing CDH. Like, this is soft CDH. I don't care what you're saying. Your Winota deck is not a 7. Get out of here. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
what if it has no humans in it?
It's not that Winota deck.
Yeah, exactly. But
I always like to play a lower. If people say it's a 7, I'm like, right, where's my 6? Because I always I'd rather the joy of winning with, like, when I beat you with the sleeveless deck. It's so much more fun when you do it with a deck without sleeves, or it's not just a lower powered deck. I think it's like you've got to think a little bit more, and you're a bit on the back foot and stuff like that, which I kind of enjoy.
There's actually a strategic advantage to playing a lower deck. So let me give you an example. If us three are playing our constructed EDH decks that are tuned but not major, let's sort of say a midish 7, but someone rocks up with a precon, particularly a modern precon, we're all going to look and be like, it's a precon, we can't get too spicy with this guy. So what, and particularly if it's a newish player, so what you'll find is that unless it's a out and out, this needs to die, this needs to be removed, blah, 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 you'll find actually what happens is a game of 3 people with someone playing in the side until they either get to a point where they become a problem. But what I found frequently happens is we've been chicken pecking each other so much that the fourth player actually just goes, oh, well, I'm just going to do this thing that my deck is designed to do. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, Christ, well, I've got no removal because I've been taking away Dom stuff or Christian stuff. And Christian's like, oh, that board wipe I used earlier that I shouldn't have. So actually playing a lower level deck can actually, I think, can be sometimes a strategic advantage.
I just think the deck that was designed by a panel of 12 people is often better than the one that I've designed myself.
Well, let's be honest. I think a lot of the restrictions of precons are going to be monetary value. So, I still am an advocate that get yourself a precon, go an EDH rec. You can change 10 cards out, 10 cards in, and you can naturally power up. Or even if you just do your land base, it's the best and simplest.
Take out the tap lands, replace them with basics. Instant upgrade.
You could do it.
Just go through all your bulk. I can tell you now, if you go through your bulk, you can build. Whenever I go through my bulk to build a random commander, I'll just be like a random uncommon commander. I'll build that. I go through my bulk. I've still got to make 30 cuts. Like yeah, like it's crazy. Like I recently I'm building at the moment Altair from Assassin's Creed for our Assassin's Creed episode, and I because I've never looked at a Mardu commander and thought that looks really cool, and this one looks really cool. Basically, it's a for a Mardu you get a 3/3 first strike. When it attacks, you can exile an assassin from your graveyard, bring every assassin back with a memory counter. That's what you exile it with. Back to attack. So over the course of the game, you end up bringing back like 10 assassins in every combat. And so I thought that was really cool. So I'm building that at the moment. That's one that I'm actually building. A lot of the stuff I do for the show, I build out of just what I have. But we try and avoid for the show, or I certainly do, because I'm not as try hard as old Wally there is. There you go, got another dig in.
Poor Wally.
We try and not, like, no one cares about seeing a Rhystic Study or a Smothering Tithe in a game we're playing with new cards, because people want to see what they could put in it. So I always just check and see what weird and wonderful stuff is in the binder before looking to order cards or net deck or something like that. So I encourage people to deck build in that way. It's really good fun. But obviously, if you're playing your fully tuned decks, you need to maybe have considered a bit more. But yeah, it can be good fun.
I've started to learn, particularly in maybe the last 6 months, that actually I've started to naturally tone some of the power down. And what I mean by that is that I'd always be like, I've got my Trop Island, so if I'm building a Simic deck, I'm going to whack it in there. Actually, what I've now come to the conclusion of is that they're good in 3, 4, 5 color decks, because that's where you really need that extra power to get you going a bit quicker. Whereas actually my Simic deck, in truth, it doesn't really even need a shock land. Let's be honest. It really doesn't. Like, it may be controversial to some people. I really don't think it is. My mind has completely started to change. Don't get me wrong. I will still play powerful, filthy decks. But I am doing the same as what you're saying. I've got a bulk box behind me full of cards. I'll filter through there and I'll be like, well, it's not quite the meta, or it's not quite what EDH Rec says is the number one, but I know it's still going to work well with this. So I'm going to whack it in there because I've already got it. And it just works perfectly well.
It says counter target spell on it, so it must be good, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes it may say counter spell unless they pay 2. Just have to be a bit of a situational. Wait till they're tapped out. Do you know what I mean?
So sometimes it could say counter spell and then be signed by Alex, and then it wins the game, which is very good.
And it counters a force of will. Absolutely good. Look, guys, I think we're going to start to wrap things up a little bit here, but Christian, first of all, thank you for coming on, and thank you for talking standard with us. I know when it comes to standard, you are my man I like to go to and pick your brains about this sort of stuff. I know on there. I know deep down, Dom, we should probably, I mean, I'm definitely going to play some more, but I think we'd probably like to as well.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've actually rebuilt my old standard deck.
Ooh.
Maybe we can record some gameplay with that sometime. But yeah.
That was all legal in Pioneer. If it's legal in Pioneer, let's go.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it probably will be.
I was going to say,
because it's Ravnica onwards, right? So yeah, it's legal.
If
it could be a meta breaker.
Yeah. Who knows?
Excellent. I mean, I do honestly. The one thing I'd like to sort of say to people, if they take anything away from this pod, is that exactly what Christian said. If you're thinking about try some Standard, Pioneer, whatever it is. If you're interested in it, go give it a try. Just get on in there. You don't have to worry about, you don't go buy your top tier meta deck. Go see what you're interested in and go play it. If it just so happens, it is what it is. Or if you've got the cards, fine. But just go play. Go be competitive. It's not as sweaty as everybody thinks it is. And it's good fun. We are playing Magic with people. At the end of the day, that's all we want to do, whatever format. Apart from me and Christian, we want to stop Dom doing what he's doing by controlling him.
That's right. That reminds. I need to get a Cavernous Souls for my Atali deck.
Funnily enough, we talked about not having eight or nine copies of something. I actually have 7 copies of Cavernous Souls. So
wow.
That's the one I've got. That's the one I've got loads of. So next time I see you, I've got some for trade.
Oh, do you remember? It is my birthday.
No. Sorry, my internet connection's about to drop. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Why would I give you a Cavernous Souls? Then I can't counter your thing.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
I'll trade you. I'll trade you.
Tally needs to be counted as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm on board on that one as well, 100%. Look, again, Christian, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. We will definitely have you back on at some point soon. I'm looking forward to, I think Amsterdam will probably be the next time we'll be touching base. I'm looking forward to a nice big bear hug, and hopefully we can play some games. Although you're probably the same as me and sitting there thinking, God, time is going to be really tight.
Yeah. We're in a house of 13 as well that I booked. So as soon as it was announced, I booked a 13 house, so we actually have a waiting list. It's been that was as big as I could find accommodation. After party at ours, maybe. Who knows?
Hell yeah.
Sounds good.
That sounds good.
Shouldn't announce that on the pod.
No. We'll all rock up. It's 13 now, but it'll be 30 something by the time we're all done.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for having me on anyway. Appreciate it.
You're welcome as always. Guys, as always, show us some love on those socials. Give us likes, comments. What do you guys want us to talk about next? We've got lots of ideas, but we're interested to hear what you want us to talk about. So ping us a message, interact with all the socials, all that lovely social media stuff we should really do more of, but we don't. But again, hope you enjoyed the pod, and I'm going to sign off from here. Dom, pleasure as always. Look forward to playing against you in a controlling deck and watching you cringe. And
yeah,
Christian, we'll catch
Cavernous Souls. I'm googling it now.
Yeah, I bet you are. Christian, we'll catch up at MagicCon Amsterdam. But thank you for listening, and thank you for watching if you're watching, guys. And we'll catch up with you guys real soon. See you later.
Cheers all. Bye.